The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any stadium built on Earth. The ceiling stretched so high that the shadows of the upper beams disappeared into darkness. Blue lights glowed softly along the walls, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. Hundreds of seats formed a great circle, each seat reserved for the representative of a different species. Some seats were empty, but many were filled with creatures of shapes and colors that most humans would not even imagine in their wildest dreams. Some had scales that shimmered like oil on water, some had skin made of crystal, some had wings folded tight against their backs. Their voices, whispers, and clicks filled the hall like the sound of a storm far away. In the very center stood a single human. He looked small compared to the towering figures around him. His dark uniform had no decoration except for the emblem of Earth on the sleeve. He stood straight, hands behind his back, face calm, even though hundreds of alien eyes were fixed on him. Some looked curious. Some looked doubtful. Others looked hostile. The council leader, a tall being with skin like living bronze and eyes that burned like torches, raised one hand. The hall fell silent. The leader's voice was deep, carrying power, and though it was not in English, every word was translated instantly into the human's ear by the council systems. You, human. You have been summoned before this council to answer a question that echoes across the stars. Tell us, what are the doctrines of Earth? What is it your kind believes? What drives your species to fight, to spread, to rise when so many others would fall? The words echoed. Doctrines. Beliefs. The question had been asked before, in different ways, by different species. But never in such a setting. Never with so many witnesses. The human diplomat did not answer at once. He let the silence stretch. He knew the weight of silence. He could hear his own heartbeat. The aliens shifted in their seats. Some leaned closer, others hissed impatiently. The leader's fiery eyes narrowed. Still, the human waited. Then, slowly, he smiled. It was not a wide smile. Not a friendly one. It was the kind of smile that suggested knowledge hidden behind the lips. It was the kind of smile that unsettled those who saw it. Finally, he spoke. His voice was calm and clear. You ask for Earth's doctrines. You ask for what we believe. Many before you have asked the same. But explanations are weak. Words do not carry the weight of truth. So I will not explain. The aliens muttered, a wave of voices rolling around the chamber. Some scoffed, some growled. A crystalline being pounded the table in frustration, sending a sharp ringing through the air. The human raised one hand slightly, silencing the protests. I will show you instead. The chamber froze. One of the winged creatures leaned forward. Its feathers bristled. Show us. Do you dare mock this council with tricks? The human's smile grew thinner. No tricks. Only truth. He reached into the small device at his side and pressed a control. The air above him shimmered. A holographic screen unfolded in the center of the chamber. Light flickered. The aliens leaned closer, eyes glowing, heads tilting. The human did not speak again. He simply said, "Watch." The hologram started. It was only a short clip, no more than 12 seconds long. But those 12 seconds had been chosen carefully. The first image was a battlefield. Smoke and fire filled the sky. The ground was torn, burned, scarred by explosions. In the distance, machines of war burned and fell. And in the center of the chaos, human soldiers stood. They were dirty, bloody, exhausted. Their uniforms were torn. Their weapons looked small compared to the towering enemy machines. But still, they stood. One soldier raised a flag. The flag was damaged, burned at the edges, but still it rose. Others around him lifted their weapons, not in victory, but in defiance. Their eyes burned with a light that no alien could mistake. The light of refusal. The light of those who would not surrender. The 12 seconds showed no words. No speeches. Just the image of humans who refused to break, even when breaking was the only logical outcome. Then the hologram ended. The battlefield vanished. The smoke disappeared. The chamber lights returned. Silence. The council was frozen. Hundreds of alien eyes stared, unblinking, at the human standing calmly in the center. The leader with bronze skin leaned back slowly in his seat. His burning eyes dimmed. He opened his mouth, closed it again, then opened it once more. But no sound came. The crystalline being tapped its claws nervously against the table. The sound was sharp, sharp enough to cut through the silence. It finally spoke, its voice trembling. This is your answer. A moment of violence. A flag raised in smoke. The human turned his head, eyes calm, voice steady. It is not violence you saw. It is not war you saw. You saw belief. You saw doctrine. You saw the spirit of Earth. No matter the enemy, no matter the cost, no matter the odds, we endure. His words were simple, but they carried weight. An alien with scales that glittered like emeralds hissed, long tongue flicking in fear. Endure. That is your creed. That is your doctrine. Yes. The human's answer was calm, almost casual. But the effect was like a blade cutting through the chamber. Some of the aliens leaned back as if the words had pushed them away. Others leaned forward as if drawn by a force they could not resist. Some whispered in their own languages, translations echoing in the ears of their neighbors. Unbroken. Endless. Dangerous. The bronze leader's voice finally returned, though softer now. You claim that this is all that drives you? To endure. The human tilted his head slightly. To endure is not all. But it is the heart. It is the truth. No matter how strong the enemy, no matter how great the storm, Earth does not bow. You wanted doctrines. That is ours. We do not break. The silence that followed was heavier than the silence before. A reptilian creature with jagged horns struck the table with its claw. Empty words. Every species claims strength. Every world claims pride. What makes yours different? The human turned his eyes to it, and the faint smile returned. Did you not watch the clip? We do not claim. We prove. The reptilian's throat clicked in anger, but it had no reply. Around the chamber, whispers grew louder. Some delegates stood from their seats. Others shook their heads. The air was thick with unease. The human did not move. He stood calmly, hands behind his back, eyes steady. He knew the clip was enough. He knew they had seen what they needed to see. Words would not matter now. 12 seconds. That was all it had taken. 12 seconds to shake entire civilizations. 12 seconds to plant fear in the hearts of those who had thought humans weak. The human did not speak again. He simply stood there, waiting, while the council wrestled with the truth they had just witnessed. The bronze leader stared at him for a long moment. His burning eyes dimmed further, and finally, he leaned back in his seat. Very well. We will consider your answer. But even as he said it, his voice lacked the fire from before. The human only nodded once, the faint smile never leaving his lips. And the chamber remained filled with silence, a silence more powerful than any speech, a silence that carried the weight of Earth's doctrine across the stars. The chamber was still heavy with silence long after the hologram faded. The image of battered human soldiers holding a broken flag lingered in the minds of every alien present. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had fought wars that scarred planets. Yet something about those 12 seconds was different. Something about the human refusal to bow clawed at them in ways no weapon ever had. The bronze-skinned leader's eyes flickered faintly, like a fire struggling to hold its flame. He shifted in his seat, trying to regain his authority. His voice carried across the chamber once more, but this time it was softer, uncertain. Explain this to us. Explain why this brief image is your answer. Do you mean to say that all of humanity is nothing more than war? The human stood calmly in the center, hands still behind his back. His expression did not change. His voice remained steady, level, and clear. What you saw was not war. What you saw was choice. In those 12 seconds, our enemies expected us to kneel. We did not. They expected us to surrender. We did not. They expected us to vanish. We did not. That is our doctrine. We do not bend. We do not fade. Even in the face of certain defeat, we endure. A ripple of whispers broke across the chamber. Some alien delegates leaned toward one another, their voices sharp and urgent. Others avoided each other's gaze, their eyes fixed on the human as though looking at something dangerous. A crystalline being, its body glowing faintly from the light inside its core, raised its voice. Endurance is not unique. Many species endure. Many have survived wars, plagues, and disasters. Why should your kind be feared for something so ordinary? The human's faint smile returned, subtle but sharp. He did not raise his voice, yet it seemed louder than all the whispers. Because we endure when we should not. When the odds say we must fall, we stand. When logic says we should vanish, we remain. You think endurance is common. But look closely at the stars. Count how many species still exist after their darkest hour. Count how many refused to fall when everything was against them. The words cut through the chamber like a knife. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A tall being with scales like black glass hissed, voice dripping with unease. He is not lying. Records show, humans have survived extinction events. Climate collapse. Endless wars with themselves. And still they live. Still they spread. The murmurs grew stronger, filling the chamber like the sound of a rising storm. Some delegates raised their claws, some tapped their talons, some folded their wings tight. None dared to meet the human's eyes. The reptilian commander, the same one who had spoken before, leaned forward. His jagged teeth glistened in the light. You say you endure. But at what cost? You burn your worlds. You destroy yourselves. You scar everything around you. What is the point of surviving if survival means leaving only ruin? The human turned his head slowly, meeting the reptilian's sharp eyes with calm defiance. The point is that we are still here. The point is that no matter the scars, no matter the ruin, humanity rises again. Others fall and never return. We rise. Again and again. That is why you fear us. The reptilian's throat clicked loudly, but he did not answer. The bronze leader leaned forward once more, his fiery eyes dimmer than before, as if the weight of the human's words pressed down on him. You show us 12 seconds, and you expect us to believe this is all we need to know of Earth? 12 seconds of stubborn defiance. The human nodded slowly. Yes. 12 seconds are enough. Because 12 seconds is all it takes to show who we are. No speeches. No declarations. Just a moment that speaks louder than any words ever could. The chamber quieted again. The whispers fell silent. The delegates sat frozen, each caught in their own thoughts. They had demanded Earth's doctrines, expecting a list of laws, philosophies, or faiths. Instead, they had been given something far more dangerous, an image of a species that would not break. The crystalline being shifted in its seat, light flickering nervously across its body. Its voice was softer now, almost trembling. If this is true, then you are not like others. You cannot be conquered. You cannot be erased. The human's smile thinned. Now you understand. For the first time, fear truly spread across the chamber. It was not fear of weapons or armies. It was fear of an idea. An idea that humans, no matter the enemy, no matter the odds, would keep coming, would keep fighting, would keep existing. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating, until finally one delegate, a tall, bird-like creature with sharp golden feathers, rose suddenly from its seat. Its wings twitched, and its beak clicked sharply. Without a word, it turned and walked out of the chamber. The sound of its steps echoed in the silence. One species had already seen enough. The chamber was uneasy now, the silence no longer calm but sharp, like a blade resting at the throat of every delegate. The image of the 12-second clip lingered in the minds of all present, refusing to fade. The first resignation had sent ripples through the council, but no one wished to admit it aloud. Alien eyes darted between one another, searching for certainty that did not exist. The human diplomat stood alone in the center, unmoved by the fear and confusion pressing in around him. His posture had not changed. His hands were still behind his back. His expression was still calm. That small, quiet smile remained on his face, as though he had known all along how they would react. A sudden voice broke the tension. A reptilian delegate, its skin patterned with jagged scales and its claws clicking against the desk, leaned forward. "This is no answer," it growled, its voice deep and rough. "You show us a moment of defiance and call it truth. But what is the hidden meaning? What is the foundation of this endurance? Do you worship war? Do you worship struggle? What are your doctrines truly? The demand hung in the air. Others turned their eyes to the human, eager to hear more, desperate for words to explain what they had seen. The human finally moved, only slightly, lifting his chin. His voice was steady, clear, and filled with the weight of certainty. You mistake what you saw. That was not worship of war. That was not glory in blood. What you saw was the spirit of survival. We do not believe in surrender. We do not accept defeat. Our doctrine is simple. When the storm comes, we endure it. When the enemy rises, we stand. Even when we have nothing left, we refuse to kneel. A crystalline being shook its head, the light within its body flickering faster. But that is madness. To fight when you cannot win, to resist when resistance only brings pain, that is illogical. It is a waste. The human's eyes fixed on it, sharp and unblinking. You call it madness. We call it life. Every victory we have ever won was built on standing when no one else would. Logic said we should die on our first battlefield. Logic said we should vanish in our first collapse. Logic said we should fall when the night grew darkest. And yet, here we are. The words landed heavily. Some aliens shifted in their seats. Some tapped their claws or tentacles nervously against the table. Others whispered in low voices, the translations flickering into many ears at once. They endure without reason, they survive without end. A bird-like delegate, its feathers bristling, leaned forward. Then your doctrine is despair. A species that lives only to resist will destroy everything around it. There is no peace in such a belief. The human's faint smile returned. His tone was quiet, but his words filled the chamber. Peace is not given. It is kept. And sometimes, to keep it, one must first prove they cannot be broken. That is the meaning you saw in that clip. We did not fight because we love war. We fought because surrender was not an option. We endure because the alternative is extinction. The bronze-skinned leader, who had been silent for long moments, leaned forward now. His fiery eyes searched the human's face. So this is your hidden meaning. Not conquest. Not pride. Not glory. But survival at any cost. The human nodded once. Yes. And you should understand that better than most. Every species here knows the taste of survival. But Earth. Earth has lived it longer, harder, and deeper than most. Our doctrine is not complicated. It is not elegant. It is not written in great books. It is written in scars. And scars do not lie. A wave of silence swept through the chamber. The words were too sharp, too simple to ignore. Each delegate remembered the faces in the clip, the broken soldiers, the ruined battlefield, the flag lifted high even as everything around them fell. They began to understand. The crystalline being dimmed, its light soft and uncertain. The reptilian delegate sat back, claws curling against the table. The bird-like one lowered its wings. And then another voice whispered from the far side of the chamber, one that trembled though its owner tried to sound strong. If this is true, if this is your doctrine, then there is no way to defeat you. To fight you is to fight forever. The whisper carried across the room, and many delegates lowered their eyes. They did not want to meet the human's gaze, because deep down, they knew the whisper was right. The human remained still, silent now. He had said enough. His words were few, but the meaning was heavy, undeniable, and terrifying. And in that silence, the council began to understand why Earth was feared. The silence inside the chamber stretched until it became unbearable. Every delegate could still see the battlefield in their minds, the flames, the broken soldiers, the ruined flag raised high when all hope should have been gone. It was only 12 seconds, but the weight of it pressed into their thoughts like a stone they could not remove. The bronze-skinned leader, who had tried so hard to maintain authority, leaned back in his chair. His fiery eyes no longer glowed as brightly. He watched the human, waiting for him to falter, but the human did not move, did not speak. He simply stood there, calm, confident, steady, as though the entire galaxy could not shake him. Then it began. A small sound. The kind of sound no warrior would want to make in front of others. It was the sound of fear. One of the delegates, a scaled creature with a crown of horns, exhaled sharply, its claws scraping the edge of the table. Its eyes shifted back and forth. It could no longer hide the trembling in its body. Others noticed. A winged being tilted its head, feathers shivering slightly. A crystalline creature dimmed, its glow flickering as though its core were weakening. The silence of the chamber was no longer respectful, it was heavy with unease. The reptilian commander slammed its claw against the desk to break the tension, but the sound only echoed like a desperate cry. "This is nonsense," it spat, but its voice cracked, betraying its fear. "They show us a picture of resistance, nothing more. It means nothing. It." The words stopped when the human turned his head slightly and looked at him. The look was not angry. It was not violent. It was worse than that. It was calm. It was the look of someone who did not need to argue, because the truth was already clear. The reptilian's mouth closed, and no further words came. The bird-like delegate leaned forward suddenly, eyes wide, beak opening in a harsh click. "Do you not see? This is their doctrine. This is their warning. They are saying they will never stop. Never surrender. Never bow. If this is true, then every war against them will last until the stars burn out." A ripple of fear ran through the chamber. Voices rose in whispers, translated into 100 languages. Endless war, never broken, unyielding. The words spread from mouth to mouth, seat to seat, until the entire council felt them crawling into their minds. The bronze leader pounded his fist against the table. "Silence!" His voice carried strength again, but it could not erase the trembling that had begun. Even his fiery eyes seemed dimmer now, as though the fire itself had doubts. He turned his gaze back to the human. "Tell me this. Do you seek to frighten us? Do you wish to spread terror with your little demonstration?" The human did not raise his voice. He did not move from his place. "I did not come to frighten you. I came to show you truth. What you feel now is not terror. It is recognition. You know what we are. You know what it means to stand against us. That is why your hands shake. That is why your voices tremble." The words struck harder than any weapon. Several delegates shifted in their seats. One of them, a tall insectoid with shimmering green wings, tapped its claws rapidly against the table. Its voice came out sharp and fast, as though speaking quickly would end its own fear. We cannot face this. Not as a council. Not as allies. Not as enemies. We will not sit here and pretend this doctrine is one we can accept. We want no part of this council any longer." Gasps filled the room. Dozens of heads turned toward the insectoid delegate. Its wings twitched violently, and then with one final slam of its claw against the desk, it stood and walked out of the chamber. The sound of its departure echoed long after its figure vanished through the massive doors. The first resignation. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the council's translation systems. But the silence was worse than noise. It pressed down on every being in the chamber, squeezing their courage out of them like water from a stone. The human did not react. He did not smile. He did not frown. He simply stood, hands behind his back, waiting, as if he had expected this all along. And deep down, many realized he had. The first resignation was only the beginning. The great doors closed with a heavy echo as the insectoid delegate left the chamber. The sound lingered in the silence, like a drumbeat marking the beginning of something no one could stop. For a long moment, no one moved. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The absence of one voice, one presence, left the entire council shaken. If one species could not face the truth, who would be next? The human stood as he had before, calm, steady, unshaken. He did not glance toward the doors. He did not watch the departure. His eyes stayed forward, as though nothing had changed, as though he had known from the start that this would happen. The faint smile on his lips seemed carved into stone, patient, unyielding. Whispers rippled through the delegates. Some spoke in low tones, but the translation systems carried their fear across the chamber. "We cannot endure that. They are dangerous. It is not survival, it is endless conflict." The words overlapped, building into a chorus of doubt. The crystalline being shifted uneasily, its inner glow flickering in rapid pulses. Its voice rang out, sharp like breaking glass. "This cannot be their truth. This cannot be the whole of them. If it is, then they are a danger to every star in this galaxy. A people who do not bow, who do not break, what is such a people but a storm without end? The human turned his gaze upon it, steady and piercing. A storm, yes. But one you create. We do not rise unprovoked. We do not march without cause. But if we are challenged, if we are struck, we will not stop until the last breath. That is not threat. That is promise. That is survival. The crystalline being trembled. The light inside its body dimmed. Its voice faltered. Then no alliance with you is safe. No peace can last. Even in peace, we would live with the shadow of this truth. I will not bind my people to such a fate. We refuse this counsel. We refuse to stand in your presence. With those words, the crystalline being stood, its tall frame glittering as the light of the chamber caught its edges. It turned, its movement stiff, and walked toward the doors. Each step rang out like shards of glass falling to the floor. The doors opened again with a groan of ancient metal, and then closed behind it, leaving only darkness where its glow had been. 2 resignations. The sound of the doors shutting seemed to break the last fragile wall inside the chamber. The whispers no longer stayed whispers. They rose, urgent and sharp, filling the air with fear. Delegates argued in their own tongues, voices high, gestures frantic. Some slammed fists, claws, or tendrils against their desks. Others hunched down in their seats, trying to shrink under the weight of what they had seen. The human remained silent. His expression did not change. His stillness was louder than all their voices, louder than their fear. He knew they were not arguing with him. They were arguing with themselves, with the truth they had already seen but did not wish to admit. The bronze-skinned leader tried to restore order. He struck his fist against the desk again and again, his fiery eyes glowing weakly. Control yourselves. This council is not a place of panic. But his voice, once filled with authority, sounded thin now. Even he could not hide the doubt in it. One of the winged delegates suddenly rose, feathers puffing, eyes wide. Its beak clicked in alarm. No. He is right. This is not a doctrine we can face. It is not belief, it is obsession. They would drag the galaxy into endless war, because they cannot stop. They cannot yield. My people will not suffer for this truth. We will not sit at this table. We are finished here. Without waiting for permission, the winged delegate spread its feathers, stormed from its seat, and moved toward the doors. Its wings scraped against the chamber walls as it passed, leaving a trail of golden plumes that drifted to the floor like falling leaves. The doors opened once more, and the delegate vanished beyond them. 3 resignations. The chamber was unraveling. Order was gone. Fear spread like a disease, carried in every whisper, every trembling hand, every unsteady gaze. Delegates who had once stared at the human with arrogance now avoided his eyes entirely. Some clutched at their seats as though holding on to the council itself would keep them from falling. Others glanced at the doors, measuring the distance, wondering if they too should walk out before it was too late. And still, in the center of it all, the human stood unmoving. His silence was more terrifying than any speech could have been. He had spoken his truth. He did not need to repeat it. They would carry it in their minds forever. The council had demanded Earth's doctrines. Now, piece by piece, those doctrines were breaking the council apart. The chamber no longer felt like the heart of galactic order. It felt like a cage filled with creatures who wanted nothing more than to escape. 3 delegations had already walked away, each departure shaking the walls of the council itself. The air was thick with unease. Some beings whispered, some trembled, others argued openly. The bronze-skinned leader tried to hold his seat with dignity, but the glow of his eyes had dimmed to embers. The human still stood in the center, calm and silent, a shadow that seemed larger than his small frame. The reptilian commander who had spoken earlier rose again. His scales caught the chamberlight, but his voice, though sharp, trembled at the edges. This is not acceptable. One by one, species are leaving. This council is breaking because of a single man and 12 seconds of images. That should not be possible. Yet here we are. He leaned forward, teeth bared. What power is this? What trick do you wield? The human's expression did not change. His voice came out low and steady. No trick. You asked for our doctrines. You saw them. What you feel now is not illusion. It is recognition. You know what it means to face a people who refuse to fall. The reptilian slammed his claw against the desk, but his movements betrayed fear, not strength. He sat back down quickly, avoiding the human's gaze. At another table, a tall aquatic being whose body shimmered with translucent skin leaned close to its companion. Its voice carried through the translation system, unintentional but clear enough for all to hear. We fought wars for centuries against rivals. We lost half our oceans. Still, we found peace. But this doctrine means no peace is possible with them. If humans cannot bend, then conflict will follow them forever. I will not tie my people to such madness. It stood, slow and deliberate, as though the weight of the decision crushed its shoulders. Its long, flowing arms trailed behind it as it moved toward the doors. Not a single voice stopped it. The doors opened and closed again, another echo through the chamber. For resignations. Now the panic spread openly. The whispers grew into voices, the voices into shouts. Some delegates yelled in fear, others in anger. The chamber filled with the noise of claws scraping desks, wings flapping, crystals cracking faintly under stress. The bronze leader rose from his seat and shouted for silence, but his voice was drowned in the chaos. The human stood still, watching. His silence was louder than their cries. Every delegate who glanced at him quickly turned away, as though afraid that one look into his steady eyes would seal their fate. Another voice rose above the others. A delegate with skin like polished stone stood, its voice deep and booming, but lined with dread. This council cannot survive this truth. We are built on balance, on compromise, on bending when needed. But you, it pointed one thick finger at the human, you bring only defiance. There is no balance in you. There is no compromise. My people will not remain here. We refuse to share counsel with a storm that will never end. It turned, heavy footsteps shaking the floor as it left. 5 resignations. A wave of movement followed. Delegates leaned forward, whispering urgently. Some pounded their desks, demanding order. Others looked only at the doors, calculating when they too would leave. The chamber, once proud, now felt like a ship sinking into dark waters, and every delegate was deciding whether to leap before it dragged them under. The bronze-skinned leader stood with shaking hands. He raised them high, trying to bring calm, but his voice had lost its fire. You are tearing this council apart. You think leaving will save you? You think closing your eyes will protect you from what you saw? His gaze fell upon the human, then drifted away again, unable to hold steady. Perhaps there is no protection. A long silence followed those words. The chamber was filled with breathing, nervous, shallow. No one wanted to admit what they already knew. The human finally broke his stillness. He stepped forward once, the sound of his foot echoing in the vast room. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence like a blade. You asked for Earth's doctrines. Now you know them. You wanted truth, and I gave it to you. What you choose to do with it is not my concern. Leave if you must. Stay if you dare. It changes nothing. Earth remains. The words sank into them, heavy as stone. Delegates shifted again. Some lowered their eyes. Some clenched their hands. Others stared at the doors, their decision nearly made. The fear was no longer hidden. It moved openly through the chamber, a living thing pressing against every wall. One by one, they would fall. One by one, the council would unravel. And through it all, the human would remain, silent and steady, as the galaxy learned the true meaning of Earth's creed. The chamber was no longer the proud heart of unity it had once claimed to be. Too many seats now stood empty, the echoes of departing delegates still lingering in the air like ghosts. 5 had already abandoned the council, their footsteps a chain of resignations that seemed impossible to stop. The fear had spread like fire in dry grass, and even those who still sat at their stations leaned back uneasily, wings twitching, claws tapping, eyes refusing to meet the calm figure in the center. The human had not moved far. He stood exactly where he had been since the beginning, hands clasped behind his back, shoulders squared. He looked small compared to the towering shapes around him, but his stillness filled the chamber in a way no voice could. His presence alone was enough to silence the whispers, even as panic continued to boil beneath the surface. The bronze-skinned leader rose again. His once bright eyes now burned weakly, as though the fire within them had been robbed of air. He stared at the human with something between anger and exhaustion. His voice, when it came, was not the commanding thunder of before. It was heavy, uncertain, and edged with fear. Your people's creed, it is more dangerous than any weapon. A species that does not break, does not bend, does not stop, such a species cannot exist in peace with the galaxy. The human tilted his head slightly, the faintest smile touching his lips. Then perhaps it is not the galaxy that needs peace. Perhaps it is the galaxy that needs to learn endurance. The words hit like stone against glass. Murmurs rose again, harsher now, voices filled with fear. A delegate of feather and bone slammed its wing against the desk. No. This is not endurance, it is madness. Endless conflict, endless struggle. If this is your truth, then your truth will consume us all. The human's eyes turned toward the speaker, calm and steady. Only if you stand against us. We do not spread war. We do not hunt for conquest. But if you challenge us, if you strike us, if you threaten our survival, then yes. Conflict will not end. We will not end. That is the difference you fear. And that is why you will never defeat us. The feathered delegate sank back, unable to meet his gaze. Silence pressed in again, heavy and suffocating. The chamber seemed smaller now, its walls closer, its air thicker. Every species present could feel it, the weight of a truth they had not wanted but could not escape. Finally, one of the remaining delegates, a being of metal and wires whose body hummed faintly with power, spoke in a voice that echoed like a machine's song. If what you say is true, then resistance against Earth is not merely unwise, it is suicide. To fight you would mean war without end. To oppose you would mean ruin for both sides. The human gave a single nod. You see clearly. The mechanical being paused, its glowing eyes flickering. Then there can be no choice. We must leave this council. We will not stand in the shadow of your creed. It stood, its movements precise, and turned toward the doors. The heavy echo of its metallic steps carried through the chamber until it was gone. 6 resignations. The chamber trembled, not with sound, but with tension. The remaining delegates looked around at one another. Their faces betrayed doubt, fear, anger, but beneath it all, one truth held them in place: they knew more would leave. The bronze-skinned leader slumped back into his seat, his fire dimmer than ever. He rubbed one hand across his face, as though trying to wipe away what he had seen, what he had heard. His voice was low when it returned, more a whisper than a command. If even machines, who feel no fear, cannot stay in the presence of your truth, then what hope is left for the rest of us? The human finally stepped forward again. His boots rang against the floor, each sound echoing in the vast chamber. He raised his head, looking slowly around the circle, meeting eyes that quickly turned away. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner. You asked for our doctrines. You asked what drives Earth. Now you know. We are not conquerors, but we are not victims. We are not endless war, but we are endless will. We do not seek to rule, but we will never bow. That is our warning. That is our promise. Remember it well. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was complete now, thick and unbreakable. The human's words hung in the air, undeniable, unforgettable. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The council was collapsing. The chamber was nearly empty. And yet the human's presence had only grown larger. He did not need armies. He did not need weapons. 12 seconds of truth had shaken the stars more than any fleet could. And those who remained knew, deep in their hearts, that the council would never be the same again. The silence in the chamber felt eternal. Empty seats stretched like scars across the circle where once proud voices had spoken of unity. 6 delegations were gone, and the ones that remained sat in restless unease, eyes darting between the doors and the single human who stood in the center. The walls seemed to lean inward now, as though the entire council building itself was listening, waiting for the final words. The bronze-skinned leader rose one last time. His fire was nearly gone, his voice a thin echo of its former strength. This council was meant to bind the galaxy together, to create balance where there was only division. But now I see, the balance has already broken. The truth of Earth is too heavy for us to carry. Even if we stayed, even if we tried, the seed of fear has been planted. It will grow, and it will consume what little trust we have left. I cannot let my people live under that shadow. Slowly, with visible reluctance, he stepped back from his seat. The eyes of the chamber followed him as he walked toward the doors. The fire in his skin no longer glowed, it had gone out completely. The doors closed behind him, and with that, the leader of the council itself was gone. 7 resignations. The air shifted again. One of the last remaining delegates, a being covered in silvery fur, rose from its seat. Its voice trembled as it spoke, though it tried to keep its dignity. We came here seeking understanding. But understanding has shown us only the depth of your defiance. We cannot stand against it, and we cannot stand beside it. My people will not sit in this chamber any longer. It turned and walked swiftly away, its footsteps quick and uneven, as though it wanted to escape before it changed its mind. 8 resignations. Only a handful remained. They looked at one another with weary, haunted eyes. No one trusted their voice enough to speak. The chamber, once filled with noise and pride, was now a hollow place echoing with absence. The human finally moved. He turned in a slow circle, his gaze passing over every seat, filled and empty alike. He let the silence stretch, let the weight of it settle into every heart that still lingered. Then his voice came, calm, quiet, yet carrying the weight of every word like steel. You wanted Earth's doctrines. You thought you could measure us, contain us, judge us. Now you know why others fear. Now you know why others fall. Earth does not bow. Earth does not break. We endure. Remember that, in your councils and in your wars. Remember it, when you decide whether to stand with us or against us. Because once the choice is made, there is no turning back. He took a step toward the doors. His boots struck the floor, and the sound echoed like a final verdict. He did not look back at them, did not pause to see their reaction. He walked with the steady stride of a man who had already won. The doors opened for him, and in that moment, the light of the chamber seemed to dim. When they closed behind him, silence fell harder than ever before. The council was broken. What had taken centuries to build had cracked in a single meeting, undone by a human and 12 seconds of truth. In the empty chamber, the few who remained sat frozen, staring at one another with eyes full of dread. None spoke. None dared. For in their silence, each of them knew the same unshakable truth. The galaxy would never forget what Earth had shown them.